Hi, and welcome to Birth Through the Veil. I'm Melissa Camrudin, and this week Nicole joins me. She is originally American, but lives in Mexico and is sharing her Mexican free birth stories.
Okay, well, I don't know. I always find I can't tell like one story without the other, you know?
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
it's all one story in a way,
It
like they
is.
all. So, yeah, so tell me, where does your mothering journey begin?
Okay, so I am originally from the United States. I am from Buffalo, New York, on the East Coast. And I moved to Mexico when I was 21 years old and been here full time since then. And so I just turned 43. So that's a majority of my adult life has been here. And my first son was born when I was 31. And so he'll be 12 this summer. And I think kind of I was reflecting on this last night. M my that is obviously when my mothering journey began, but about almost 2 years before he was born, a little bit more than that actually, 2 years and a few months, my niece was born in my house, unassisted home birth,
Oh.
and it was me and my sister-in-law and my brother. So that was probably what, propelled me to
Hmm.
the path that I ended up being on or I am on.
Do you go to births, or was it just because it was your family?
That was because it was my family, and,
Hmm.
they lived here. They just had moved here down where we live, and I have been to a lot of births since then. Yeah, that weren't mine, but that's kind of
Hmm.
part of my story, and so that birth was incredible, and the process to kind of get to the decision to birth unassisted at home, I kinda got to accompany her in that as well. And so it was just this really beautiful, like yeah, kind of like a full circle. And then I also was there about 11 months before my son was born. I was able to be at my best friend's birth, which was also unassisted at home, her first baby, just her and her husband and me. And that was yeah, and so therefore, my only experiences witnessing anything about birth,
Wow.
um, close to me were those 2 really beautiful, amazing, all the positive things, powerful, successful, unassisted home births. So, that kind of, in a way that was I was lucky to be able to have that as my, like, initiation.
Hmm.
Um, so that's how it started, yeah, and then, I was so her daughter was born in January and mine in August, and so I was actually pregnant while I was at that birth of my friend.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, and that's how it all started. And then my baby was born, yeah, in August. Um, yeah. Do you want me to just dive right into that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what? I haven't met anybody who's had so much free birth experience or yeah, before having babies. That's so cool. Like, I mean, most of our introduction to birth is highly medicalized, and then you have to like deprogram yourself, to get
Yeah.
to a place where you're like, oh yeah, it's biologically natural.
Yeah. Definitely. And
Hmm.
and I think that um from that point in my life, that was a major piece because of the age that we all were, a lot of my friends started to have babies too, and that became something that many of them did. And I think my birth and our friend's birth and my sister-in-law's birth were all positive examples for them um, that led to them being able to feel powerful and well,
Yeah.
empowered to do the same thing. So, yeah, it was we're all really blessed to have had that part of our journey. Um,
Oh, so cool.
so
It's
cool,
how we
yeah.
learn, hey? Like we have to know what's possible by seeing what other women do. I just recorded a podcast with Jane Hardwick Collings,
I
and
saw that.
I took a little clip out of it. I don't know if you saw it on my Instagram of her talking about how it's our responsibility as women when we have these birth stories to share them with each other, and like that's what happened in your community. You're
Absolutely.
like sharing the experience, and so cool.
Yes, yes. And, to be fair, uh, I have a lot of friends that had children the same time I did, and they did not have that
Mhm.
same experience, and they didn't follow the same choices and decisions, and that's also great and completely
Yep.
fine. Yeah. Um, so I knew that we knew that we didn't want to know the gender of our babies, and so during my first pregnancy, I had ultrasounds. I don't know, I think I may have had 4 or 5. We went to a pretty locally renowned, obstetric kind of gynecologically, like a professional doctor,
Mhm.
in the area to do
Are
those
you in New
things.
York
No,
at that time?
in Vallarta, in Mexico. Yeah,
Oh, you're in Mexico. Okay.
yeah, I've been
Mhm.
here, yeah. And
The whole time.
so
Mhm.
the whole time, that person gave us ultrasounds and, he knew that we didn't wanna know the gender, and so he just kinda let us know that everything was fine and, your heartbeat's good and all the things, and so, um, leading up to the birth, I I had heard a lot of stories, read a lot of blog posts, just so much, yeah, like, stimulation around birth and what it could be and what it couldn't be and all the variations of quote unquote "normal." And so I was kinda prepared for anything. I, started labor at sunrise, and, my husband, I was, like, kind of walking around and stretching and stuff, and I asked him to start to fill up the birth pool, and we knew that that was a task in of itself to pump it up and fill it up and everything. And then I contacted my brother and his wife, who lived at that time an hour away from us, and I said, "We're in labor, come." So they were making their way down, um, and my best friend, who had her 9-month-old baby, came over, and the labor was very intense, but very quick. I think in total 7:30 a.m. He was born around 10:30 a.m. So
Wow.
the like height of my labor experience was 3 hours long. I had the pool, I had a birth pool, and so I got in the
So
water
you already
and
knew, like, was your plan already to birth unassisted? I guess so, because 'cause you'd
yes,
already had that experience. Yeah.
yes, yes,
Years, yeah.
yes, and I had just said this last night to a friend, I have a lot of beautiful doula humans in my world. I know several midwives in our region. I have friends who had babies that, were older than my babies, and I was so, sure that I needed it to just be me and my people, and I had this just immense awareness that I needed to only trust the ones that I knew I could trust, and those ones
Mhm.
were the ones that literally just birthed the same way that I did. So, I had to tell my doula friends no, my midwife friends no, and they would be, like, begging, "I'll just stand in the corner and I'll sing you songs,"
Yeah.
or, "I'll just bring you soup," and I was like, "That's not how it works." But
Yeah.
I love you, and I'm proud of you, and I'm glad you hold space for women, but it's not gonna be my birth.
Mm.
And yeah, and so my son was born, and it was amazing, and my brother showed up with his family, I don't know, 15 minutes after the baby came out. He was born in water, and
Mm.
because we didn't wanna know the gender, the first thing you think about when the baby comes out is, does he have a penis or not? Or is it a boy or a girl or, whatever. And, so I asked my husband right away, and he said, "He has a penis." I said, "Okay." And then I said, "How are his toes?" My niece, my brother's daughter, has 2 toes on both of her feet that are kind of webbed. And
Mhm.
my father had that, cousins, like, it's kind of a genetic trait. Nothing
Yeah.
negative at all. It was just, like, this kind of joke, like, "Does he have webbed toes or not?" And my husband
Yeah.
said, "There's something strange about his feet." And so right away, we noticed that, his left leg was shorter than his right leg significantly, and he had 3 toes on his left foot, and his arm, is, grown to the elbow, and then he has a small little, arm on that side. And
Yeah.
obviously, we didn't know that, we didn't expect that. Never in my life have I ever seen anybody or been around anyone or known anyone that had a difference, a limb difference, which is what we refer it to. And so, as the first birth, very beautiful, successful, healthy, all the thing, incredible birth. And then that was what our realization was like, oh, okay, this is different. And yeah, and that was the initiation into motherhood for me and my husband,
Mm.
into parenting. And my people were there. And I think that people ask me this a lot. What was were you scared? What was your initial, like feeling or reaction, or what went
Mhm.
through your mind? And for some reason, well, I know the reasons, but the universe really just set the stage for my husband and I, and really my family and my friend, to it was completely fine. I know that that is a strange thing for some people to hear,
Yep.
but there was such a level of like, oh, like this, like almost like a peaceful awareness came over us that he's breathing, his eyes. I knew the APGAR score, I knew all the things because we've been
Mhm.
in the field of attending and being around this kind of stuff. And so he was, moving his face. All of the signs were so on point with this beautiful, healthy little human. Um, and then there was just this bit. And so we contacted our partero, our midwife friend, a male midwife friend of ours, and
Mm.
said, Amigo, this is the case, and he's great, and his APGAR score is this, and he's breathing, and his face is red, and everything is working, and what should we do? So he came over, and he checked me out, and he checked him, and he said, he seems amazing. Like, he's very healthy, he's breathing strong, he's moving his legs. This is an orthopedic thing. This is, it's not affecting his internal organs
Mhm.
or his developmental capacities. At least it doesn't appear, but you'll have to go to a specialist. Um, and in the birth itself, I tore, which I didn't
Mhm.
realize, and so he checked me out, and him and my best friend, gave me a few stitches on my bed while daddy held the
Mhm.
baby skin to skin. And yeah, and that was our first birth story. Obviously, well, birth stories last a lot longer than just the birth.
Mhm.
Postpartum is a
Mhm.
whole experience, and getting
Yeah. How
pregnant
was your
again.
postpartum?
Um, it was awesome, to be honest. Like, I was very nourished.
Mm.
I had bone broth and coconut water instantly. I had a lot of preparation, awareness. I was really eating really, really well, and so I had a recovery that felt, yeah, that felt very balanced, and breastfeeding was really hard.
Mm.
Nobody really told me how hard that can be. Maybe that's not something that new moms, like, share. Maybe we block it out, I don't know. But that felt really hard, really scary.
Mhm.
I was, I had an inverted nipple on one side, and there was all this kind of manipulation I had to do, and, um, yeah, and so that felt hard and, extremely challenging in the moment. But I did a lot of baby wearing. I had a lot of
Mm.
support, from my husband and my friends, and yeah, and so it felt good. In hindsight, um, we learn so much when we're
Yeah.
older, and you hear so many stories, and you witness and you experience and live it again. I probably should have just been more relaxed and stayed down at home a lot more. I
Yes.
felt
Yeah.
really itchy to be outside and, like, sit in the park and take him on walks. But, down here in Latin America, there's something called the cuarentena, which is our 40 days of postpartum kind of bubble, and
It's
it's
beautiful.
very common, completely normal. It's what everybody does no matter how their birth goes,
Mhm.
and
Mm.
I couldn't. I think I did, I don't know, I think I did 3.5 weeks, and I was like, "I need to get to the beach, or we have to," So, in hindsight, because I didn't have any other children at the time, I absolutely, could have
Yeah.
soaked that up just so deeply. And but yeah, I felt very supported, and that it was a easeful transition in a way. However, a
Mhm.
major part of our first few months of his life was really orienting ourselves and navigating what is the medical industrial system.
Mhm.
We had to confirm his diagnosis. We went to a bunch of specialists. We were referred to go here. We went to National Institutes of Rehabilitation in Mexico City. We got into Shriners Hospital, which is a orthopedic specialist facility in the US and Mexico for children. So going from completely unassisted free birth, hands-off pregnancy,
Mhm.
really low medical life to, diving headfirst into what we thought we needed to be doing for our son, um, that was really hard, and
Yeah.
I think I still am processing that, and he's gonna be 12
Yeah.
this summer. We were, um, how do you say, like, we were told or we were consulted or, encouraged to amputate his arm, amputate his leg, do a lot of major invasive surgeries on his little body when he was very small.
Mm.
There was talk of injecting a kind of a cortisol steroid thing that would be giving him throughout yeah, just a lot. And we had
Mhm.
to make those decisions, and he was very little, and
Oh, that's
that
hard.
was really scary and really hard.
Yeah.
We are just yeah, and our family was so supportive and people were so good to us, even if they might have thought different things inside their minds or in their homes. They didn't project that on us at all, and
Mhm.
in the end, we didn't amputate his leg or his arm. He learned how to walk when he was 18 months old, and he is amazing. He's in taekwondo, he rides bikes, he's a really great horseback rider, he's an incredible ocean swimmer,
Oh,
like yes.
yeah.
So that was the beginning of my mom life, and my first birth story. Sí,
Mm.
that is that. And then, we were pregnant. My second son was born when my first son was 22 months old,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
like,
Quick.
quick yeah, and then my third was when the second one was 22 months as well.
Okay.
So, when we found out that we were pregnant with our second son, that's when a lot of people had a lot to say, and
Mhm.
and it meant I believe that maybe people don't realize how
Yeah.
much that might have impacted us in that time of our life. A lot of our loved ones believed that, we should have been getting genetic testing and really kind of going through that process of, you know, finding out who's the carrier of what, are we viable? What is, like a lot of that. And we didn't want that. We decided that that wasn't, important for us and that wasn't a
Mhm.
priority. And our kind of axis, our baseline of why we chose to do medical, unassisted birth and our lifestyle, it wasn't aligned with that. And at the end of the day, when we sat with the decisions or the thought, the question kept coming, why? Why? Okay. Why do I want to know if I'm the carrier of this? Then what? If we become like, are we going to terminate this pregnancy? No. What if
Mhm.
our son is born the same as our first son? He's amazing and he's completely
Yeah.
perfect and whole exactly as he is. So I would be blessed if I had 20 children like him. Um and so that was a process too. And I think that a lot of people in Western society and North American medicalized culture, that is scary and that is a big abyss, and
Yeah.
a lot of women and families aren't I don't know, they won't walk through that portal,
I think we have a delusion of control, right? That as though if you got the genetic testing, you can control an outcome. And really, all you could control is like not having more or terminating. And even like, you think of like you had ultrasounds through that pregnancy and still didn't know, right? So there's that piece of control sometimes we think we have in pregnancy, like we'll know everything. And even if you had, your option would have been like termination or not.
right?
Like that's it. That's all there ever is. And I found also in like my own wild pregnancies, free births to be like, okay, interventions I may or may not want. Well, what I do? What would I do with the information? Would I do anything different than I'm doing now?
And
Like for me, generally, it was like, no, I wouldn't. So
right.
like,
Exactly.
Carry on. We actually have no control. It's an
Exactly.
illusion.
Exactly. And also that question, and this is a whole other, this is a mega conversation and this is a whole theme in of itself, is the reality and the concept of ableism in our society.
Yeah.
And so, okay,
Yep.
and if your child has chromosome whatever, this syndrome, or is going to be medically challenged and all, what is your situation? What is your issue? Do you feel like you're not capable of caring for that child, or,
Yeah.
XYZ? It's obviously deep and it's a sensitive theme, but we
It's so like there's so many questions, so many ways to think about it, right? I read this Spirit Babies book, and like I
Mhm.
don't know where how I feel about like all the pieces of it, but one suggestion was, what if these like little souls chose these bodies
Yeah,
and are like coming in to do something around that body, so like
exactly.
it's not an error in that way. It's a piece of learning for this lifetime. And
Exactly.
it's beautiful. I have a sister who has some physical challenges, and is also autistic. And I think like she's moved through life totally differently than I do. Her life is totally different than mine, and I know there's a lot of grief around that in some ways for my parents. There's also a lot of beautiful things
Yeah.
that she sees that I don't have time for in my fast-paced life.
Exactly. No, exactly. That's a
Mhm.
perfect example. And like, yes, of course there's grief. Yes. Oh my goodness, we
Mhm.
literally live to grieve, I feel.
Mhm.
Humans. And
Yeah.
like, that's also okay. And I think that
Yeah.
I definitely recognize that because I obviously am exposed to and in circles of disability families, disability parents, limb differences, all of that. A lot of people's grief is intimately connected with an ableism mindset because we're
Mhm.
like, oh, well, they're going to miss out on, I don't know, riding their own bike or walking down the aisle when
Mhm.
they get married. And it's all of these
Mhm.
interpretations of what a good life should be based upon this physically able bodied reality that we have been
Mhm.
literally programmed to believe is the only way to live a good life. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
that's not actually real. So I think that, yeah, like I've had friends say, oh my goodness, I found out my child has, you know, a twisted toe or something, and they're deeply grieving. And when you step out of that kind of space of that individual situation, oh my goodness, like your child only has a twisted toe, like everything else is going to be exactly as you had envisioned. And
Mhm.
so our grief, I think, sometimes also is intimately related to almost like a twisted, medicalized version of reality that we live in. And like you said,
Mm.
that control. And yeah, it's scary to
Yeah.
raise humans. It's scary to
Yeah.
be responsible for their well-being and for keeping them safe, and it's very scary to consider having a child in a wheelchair who is nonverbal or anything. And also, what, like you said with the Spirit Baby book, like, what if that was your design? What if that really
Mhm.
is your life path? Like, you aren't open to it, and yeah, I mean, yeah, it's so layered,
Yeah.
but it's important
Because there's
because
gifts in all of it, right? Like we can choose. I mean, you can choose what you take from it, but there's like so many gifts there for the family as well. Hmm.
yes, 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 and,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, um, when I found out I was pregnant and we started to tell our friends and our people, the reaction was bizarre, and they said, "Are you gonna have a baby? Are you gonna do the same birth?" I said, "Well, yeah. Yes. Why wouldn't I?" And what I ended up doing was I decided not to go to that first doctor. Oh, just to kind of add this. So when our first pregnancy, we received those ultrasounds, we got a little CD. Back in the day, they would give
Mm.
you like a little CD that
Yeah.
with your name on and your picture, and you could look at it at home. After he was born, my husband went back and looked at he went back and looked at those little discs, and you can completely see. It is so apparent that my son had a little arm on those
Mm.
ultrasounds. Very apparent. I mean, when you're pregnant, you have no idea what you're looking at. What is it like? What are those
Hmm.
little body parts? It's very challenging to understand. But post, when he's here in our
Hmm.
arms, it's like, oh my gosh, that was so obvious. And so we were then sitting with the reality, like, did this doctor know that but didn't tell us? Or did he, like, was it
Mm.
negligence and he didn't see it? Like, there's all of these questions, and a lot of people also had issues with that, and at the end of the day, like you just said, we were so grateful that we didn't know, because
Yeah.
that would have probably caused a lot of anxiety, worse,
Oh, yeah.
just so many, yeah. So in the end, whatever the reason was or however that ended up going down, we believe that it was exactly as it needed to be. Um,
Mhm.
Also, in my second pregnancy, I decided to do more hands off, less ultrasounds, less all those things. And what I did was I hired a female gynecological professional, a
Mhm.
gynecologist who was supposedly known in the area as being like, down here, the word a decade ago was partos humanizados, which is humanized birth, which is to say that
Mhm.
dehumanized birth is the norm, I suppose.
Yeah.
So,
Kind of is.
totally. And so this woman had a reputation, and I was like, "All right, I'm gonna go with this person." And my first appointment, like, I was I'm a healthy 30-something-year-old person, I'm eating well, yeah. She insisted that, I had to take the that test to find out if you have gestational diabetes, because
Mhm.
my ultrasound was coming that my child was very big, and if I was so set on having a home birth, my baby couldn't grow bigger than X size.
Oh.
But my thing is that, like, I already knew that those stories were bogus, and I had already done my work,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't be able to be swayed by that narrative. And so I needed her paperwork, to be perfectly honest. I needed, because where I am and circumstances around legalizing an unassisted free birth baby, you need to prove that you did certain things. And so I was
Mhm.
kind of attached to following through with a couple of the things that she told me I needed to do in order to get her signature and get my documentation. So I did this gestational diabetes test against my intuition, and it was horrible.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
so gross, so bizarre,
It's so gross.
so gross. I had gestational diabetes according to the results. And I brought her the results, and she said, "Okay, I cannot sign off on you having a home birth." And I said, "Well, I'm not asking your permission." And yeah, and then I ended up terminating our time together, and she said, "I'm not going to sign off on those papers for you." And I said, "Well, thank you for your time, and I understand, and that's your job on the line, and all good, but also it's my life and my baby. So we're not, I'll work it out." And my mom was visiting me at the time, and she was so supportive, and she's like, "Yeah, like, if that's not what you're looking for and that's not what you need, don't follow the line, toe the line with them." And so I quit the doctor, and my second birth was, I thought his due date was around July 30th. And so my mother-in-law comes to visit us the last week of June to just be with us, be with my son, be with her son, my husband, for a few days, a week. And on July 2nd in the morning. And it was July 2nd, and it was early in the morning. And I woke up and I told my husband that I felt like stuff was happening. Like, I was feeling my hips and all the signs, right? And um, but my mother-in-law was there, and my best friend, who was gonna come and be my doula, was on a trip to Los Angeles that morning for 3 days.
Mhm.
And I was like, "But it's not today, it's not time." And so I was in total denial until around 10:30 in the morning, and I said, he comes outside with me, and he's like, "I see you, and I recognize that this is it. This is birth. Like, can you," he kinda, like,
Mm.
grabbed me by the shoulder and was like, "Can you see what's going on?" I was like, "Okay, okay, fine." Um, I just wasn't in control, right? Like, my mother-in-law was at my house, and my doula wasn't gonna be there, and so that was hard to accept in the moment. And I said, "Okay, go get the bones to make bone broth, and I'll work on my bone broth with the baby, with my son, and, hanging out, and we'll get started." And so he called my brother and my little niece, And my sister-in-law came and they started to fill up the birth pool. And I was just cruising around in my underwear, making bone broth and hanging in my kitchen and getting through the contractions. And it was so let's say around 8 a.m. that started, and he was born at 5:45, 6 p.m. So it was a whole day of that. And at one point, my mother-in-law kind of like was like looking at me and went over to he told me this way later. Obviously, he did not tell me this that day. And she was like, "Are you sure she should be near the stove making soup? She doesn't have any pants on." And my man was like, "Don't say a word to her. Leave her alone. She knows what she's doing. It's fine." And so
Bless him.
that was yeah, like exactly. I love that. And that was her like cue to be like out of sight, out of mind. Like you just witness me and yeah, because yeah. So that birth was um in hindsight, I'm gonna say it was long and hard, but I've since been to friends' births that were 36 hours or like a
Yeah.
whole weekend. And so in
Mhm.
my own little reality, it was long and hard, but at the same time,
Mhm.
right, it wasn't 36 hours. And it was a lot
Mhm.
of physical contractions. I was in my room on my bed on my hands and knees a lot. I was trying to like hold on to the columns in the hallway and really kind of bearing down a lot on the ground. I'm a Capricorn. I'm an earth sign. That like hard, solid walls, bar, floor is what feels good in my birthing. And then being able to get into the water. And so
Mhm.
I think I got in the water at like maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe earlier. And I was in the
Mhm.
water in and out. Like I had to get out to go to the bathroom for hours. For hours. I don't even know. And my sister in law was there with me. And so she has one daughter, my first birth that I witnessed. And I was just like, yeah, they cared for me so much and they were so good to me. And like she would just feed me ice. I just like frozen pineapple and like putting like coconut water on my face. And
Mhm.
I remember being like, "What do I do? What's gonna happen next?" And she was like, "I don't know. You just did this. You know what's going on. You just did this 2 years ago." And she was just it was just exactly what I needed. And she just kept
Mhm.
saying, "You're doing it. You're doing it." And because these humans in my realm they're not like timing anything. They're not checking
Yeah.
me. They're not like touching my like nothing is really hands-on at all. And so it's a lot of trust. And really like yeah, it's a lot of trust and really realizing that I am trusting that this is going to come out and I'm not measuring it. And so he was born like I said around 5:45 and when he came out he wasn't breathing. Well, when he came out the people in the room thought that he wasn't breathing even though I felt him and he was breathing.
Mhm.
But in the sweeping of the moment my husband and my mother-in-law and my brother were a little frightened, and so they said, "Let me hold him." My husband held him, and they, like, lifted him upside down, and he started crying, and then
Yeah.
I got him back, and, and that was it, and it was amazing and beautiful, and my little boy was there, he woke up at one point, my niece was, like, brushing my hair while I was in the pool, everybody made me food, we had chocolate cake and pizza, um and then the next day, I had to go to the local clinic to get the papers for him, and
Mm.
that's a whole other traumatic thing. I was screaming at a male nurse because he was trying to give my son an injection. Um, that's just yeah. The idea of having a free birth, and this is in hindsight again, I've really, like, mentored and spoken to so many women in my area that have done this, and I say, "Listen, you need to do your due diligence and research your shit because
Yeah.
birth is I would birth 1,000 times. I don't have trauma around my births, me. I have trauma around the post-birth trying to legalize my babies and get the
Mm.
documents in order and get the ticks from the doctor and get the things and prove that I did this And
Yeah.
that's stressful, and that's scary, and if you don't know what you need to do in your state or your county or wherever you live, you can potentially lose a lot of autonomy, and, yeah, and so I've learned a lot of lessons in that too.
Mhm.
Um, in the end, I didn't get his papers that day, I didn't get any papers for him until he was almost 8 months old. My mother passed away during the period between his
Mm.
he was 5 months old, and she died when he was 8 months old, and, we had to do an emergency trip to the US to go to her,
Mm.
ceremony, and in that process of getting an emergency passport for my son, a US passport, I had to provide paperwork, and so I went back to the hospital, and luckily I had a contact of the director of pediatrics, and they had a file of my name of the day that I went in raging with my newborn baby
Mm.
and my and
Right.
my mouthy mother-in-law, and, that existed, and because that piece of paper existed, I was able to get the things I
Mm.
needed and facilitate all the stuff. And that was yeah, and postpartum with a baby and a two-year-old is bonkers,
Yeah.
and not anything like it is when you only have one baby, and that was hard. My husband worked away a
Mhm.
lot in that season of our life,
Oh, yeah.
so I was alone a lot with the babies. Breastfeeding was so easy. My toddler ate
Mm.
awesome. We were eating great. We had a lot of outdoor time. We had a mega huge backyard. So all of that was so beautiful and genuinely easeful in a way that I knew what I was doing. And at the same time, putting two babies to sleep is insane. Like
Yeah.
diapering and bathing and tending to your own body, that was just
Mhm.
yeah, it's just logistically hard.
Yeah.
But all of the rest of it was really amazing. Yeah. And now and so he's almost 10 years old
Mm.
in a couple months. Um, yeah, and then my 3rd son, it was an unexpected pregnancy, um, which is a whole experience in of itself as grown-ups and, a family and how you like, how you receive that and how you navigate that and, the conversations that come up around that, especially for us women who are from North America. It's a very different
Mm.
cultural outlook of viable options than people from the rest of
Mm.
the world, if you know what I mean. So that conversation was had, and we decided that we wanted to become a family of 5. And we did that. And I didn't go to any ultrasounds. I didn't do any single nothing at all with a medical professional, not once.
How was that experience comparatively?
Amazing. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, it's clearly anybody who's done anything like this, like I heard you say wild pregnancy, like there's a lot of doubt too. You're like,
Yeah.
am I sure? What I is
Am I
this?
even
Are
pregnant?
we even pregnant? But then it's like, yeah, it's like 18 weeks in, and you're like, okay, yeah, there's the thing.
Yeah, that's a human. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're like, well, what's going on that little human's body? Is he missing an arm? Is there
Mm.
are his eyes growing? Just
Yeah.
it's just a shadow of
Here's the
doubt.
funny thing is, like, you didn't know before either. Like, like, you thought you did because 'cause you're doing all the things our culture says you're supposed to do, like getting your belly measured and your
Exactly.
heart rate checked,
Exactly.
but you didn't know. You didn't know anything, and you still
Exactly.
don't know anything. That's the
Exactly.
that was the learning for me.
Exactly. And really, none yeah. I mean, just the culture of ultrasounds is so weird. Yeah. And
Mhm.
so I thought he was gonna come around mid-April. That was my, like, calculations. Mid-April is spring break. We live in tropical Mexico and beach area, so spring break is a mega season
Mm.
in this area, so there's a lot of stuff going down, there's a lot of traffic, it's very hyped up energy, and so that's around the time we thought, and I had a lot of prodromal labor, for a few months leading up, which was also a bit scary because I didn't know what that
Mhm.
was. I didn't experience things like that. I didn't have Braxton Hicks. I didn't have anything like that in my first 2 pregnancies until birth was literally starting, like, which is great. I mean, I'm so lucky that's not the case for a lot of women. But the third time around, it wasn't like that. I had a lot of, yeah, like painful, uh, just like soreness. My hips were doing a lot of different things. I had a lot of back pain that I had never experienced, not even in labor. So that was
Mm.
different, and that felt questionable because I was like, "Well, am I in labor? Like, what is this?" And luckily, my awesome women in my life were like, "Oh, that's prodromal labor. That's that's normal." And so I had a lot of that, and I thought I was going into labor literally the first week of April. I thought I was going to have a baby, and so we had visitors. My husband had friends that were going to come and stay for a work project that they were recording for a hotel, whatever. And so we had two friends, male friends, staying in our house for 5 days. And I love these humans, all good, but I was expecting to birth a baby before they even got there. So that was intense. On a Friday, May 1st, no wait, May 2nd, on Friday, May 2nd, they left at 1 p.m. At 3 p.m., I was in full labor. Like my body was literally waiting for them to close the door and leave, and I started. Um, and because I had already done birth before, it didn't feel so intense. And so I was outside with my kids. I have these beautiful photos. We're in the backyard. It was the contractions or the waves or whatever you want to call it. It was intense. It was a lot, but it was manageable. It felt good to finally know that that was what it was and to not be like in this floating, like, oh, is this it or no? So I called my best friend and she was on her way. I said, I don't know if it's going to happen in 20 minutes or in 20 hours, but it's happening. Come if you want. We're here. They all showed up around maybe like 8 or 9 p.m. Babies were sleeping. My brother, my sister, my niece. My husband blew up the birth pool and he's like, you can hang out there if you want. We don't really know what's going to happen. And my best friend, she's like, all right, let's have a beer. Obviously, that's questionable. Some people, yeah, that might be taboo for many, but we'll have a Corona beer on our porch and just chit chatting. And as we're sitting outside hanging out, she said to me, you are grimacing every 2 minutes. What's going on? I was like, well, it's been like that for 6 weeks. I don't know. And she's like, no,
Mm.
let's time it. And so I was sitting in a wooden chair and I was like, ah, and she's like, okay, that was 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I think you could go to sleep and I'm going to go in the pool and chill and I'll call you. If she's right next door, right in the other room, I'll let you guys know. So my man was like, I said, I'm going to go in the room by myself. I'll see you in a little while. And I said, can you start putting hot water in the pool? And he comes in and he's like messing with the hose. And I just kind of have this vision of him moving around with the hose and like mechanical stuff in the corner. And I was holding onto the wall, my concrete, like stability. And he walked up to me and he said, um, you're gone. You left. Yeah, te fuiste. Like you went to the stars. And I said, really? You see that? And he's like, yeah, you're in it. I said, oh my God.
Mm.
Okay, 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 okay. I, like, did this strange kind of crawl thing to the pool. It was not full, which I was kind of a little paranoid about, but I was like, "I'm gonna do it anyway." I said, "Can you turn the water off? Turn the water off." And in that, he left the room, went 5 feet to the bathroom to turn the water off, and in that instant, the baby popped out. Um, and I didn't expect that, and that's not how my other births were at all, and so the baby was in my hand, and I was facing the back of the room, the wall, so all they could see was the back of my head and my body, and my husband come in, and he goes, "¿Qué pasó? What happened?" And I said, "He's here. It is here. It's here." And he's like and then he starts yelling everybody, like, the names of my friend, my brother, everybody comes running in, they're all sleeping, and it was at midnight, 12:12, midnight on May
Mm.
3rd. So, they were like, "Keep up," like, so none of them witnessed the actual birthing of the human, but they were all there for the buffering up to it and around it, and yeah, and he came out, and that was wildly easy, but I say with his
Yeah.
birth, I think I was in labor for, like, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So, like,
Longest labor.
literally, and so then it was just like he popped out, it was fine. And the
Do you feel like it was, like, no pushing? Like, it was just, like,
yes, no pushing.
fetal ejection?
Yes, like,
Yeah.
literally, as soon as I lifted my leg to, like, climb into the birth pool, I think that that was, like, the the thing.
It's like, there's
Yeah,
the space.
yeah, exactly.
Done.
And also that I, like, stopped talking and was alone.
Yeah.
It was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
we've been waiting." He's like, "I've been waiting for you to do that." Um, and also
Yeah.
the placenta, that my thing with the placenta, I always was kind of like, "Okay, I wanna get the placenta, like, I want this to be finished." I forget that you have to do 2 births basically in 1.
Mhm. You
And,
do.
I, like, went in the shower, we did the burning of the umbilical cord about an hour, and then I went in the shower and birthed the placenta in a salad bowl.
Mhm.
All 3 of my births, the placenta came out when I went to take a shower. That was my
Mm.
ticket to do it, for whatever reason, that's how it worked, and, yeah, and the placenta was beautiful. They made me a little smoothie with strawberries and a tiny piece of the placenta in it. My friends brought me, like, birria and, like, stew the next day, and yeah, and postpartum with 3, interestingly enough, was a lot easier than with 2.
Hmm.
Yeah, we
Why do you
had
think that was?
I think because the babies could play together, the 2-year-old and the
Mhm.
4-year-old were kind of already
Yeah.
had that dynamic, and so I
Yeah,
kinda
I could see that.
did get to be
Mhm.
the baby with the baby, and there was this they were already they weren't old, but they were big enough to, like, be entertained, and, they started to see little movies, and, like, there was a different dynamic than when they were newborn and 20 months old, no? And so
Mhm.
that was really great. We had a different setup in our yard. Yeah, it was nice, and I already knew what to do with the paperwork, and so that took 1 hour. I went to the place, I got the signature, we did the thing, I got the stuff passed. So, yeah, the 3rd time around was yeah, just so much was learned. And needless to
Mhm.
say, my 2nd son and my 3rd son do not have, the limb difference that my 1st son has
Mhm.
at all. My 2nd son has, like, a little birthmark on his ear, and which is his difference, he says, and then yeah, and then my 3rd son has some kind of it almost looks like scar tissue on his hand, but nothing
Mhm.
abnormal, and that yeah, and so
Yep.
that was kind of our yeah, that was our journey of the birth story. And then after my son was born, when he was 40 days old, the baby, my 3rd son, I went to
Mhm.
my best friend, who was my first free birther, and her son was born that day. I went with my baby.
Oh.
He was 40 days, and her baby was born on June 12th, and we were there for that, which was really special. And yeah, and then after that point, when my son was a baby, I went to births of friends that they were all around the
Mhm.
same time. They were having home births unassisted. I wasn't their midwife or their medical attendee.
Mhm.
I was just their friend who could tell them that they were okay and feed them coconut water and, clean up their poop if they needed somebody to do that. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and then my other thing is that I've really valued it's really important to me that when I have attended or been at births where my friends were having their babies, that I was there to be able to support the cleanup, because I know that that's
Mhm.
hard and that's icky sometimes, and not even the husbands wanna do it, and, unless you have somebody that you're paying to tend to you in that way, it's a challenge, and so cleaning out the
Yeah.
birth pool became, like, like, a task on my list that was so I was so, like, honored to do it. A month and a half ago, 48 days ago, my friend, had a baby, and she asked me if I could be her birth pool cleaner. I said, "Yes, I will come, I will clean the blood off your legs, and I will clean your pool." Absolutely, and so I got to do that, and yeah, and since my son was born, I've been to some births that weren't the way that mine were, that had
Mhm.
all sorts of outcomes, emergency transfers, stillborn, um,
Mhm.
a lot of wild things in a very small number of people, so I realized that the way that I see birth and the process of that ceremony, that ritual is not necessarily aligned with a lot of other people, and so I need to really take care of my spirit and soul and family
Mhm.
and energy in that realm. And so there was a time in my life where I would have really loved to be able to attend births and as a profession. And then I think that's not now. I think that might be when I'm a
Mm.
grandmother or something. Um,
Yeah.
because it does require a lot of energetic
Hmm.
space and a lot of time. Yeah, just emotional work.
Both, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not scheduled. It could be many, many hours away from your family. It's really challenging to do in the deep mothering years
Yeah,
of your
exactly.
life, and to come up, like you're saying, energetically clean to a birth where you're not carrying your own whatever it is, as well as whatever you carried from the last birth you were
Yep.
at. That takes a lot of
Yep.
spiritual hygiene.
Exactly. That's such a great
Hmm.
way to say it. And some of my very there's not very many people that I would recommend anymore to support birth in the region where I am.
Hmm.
Long story, different show, different conversation. The one that I do, yeah, there are things that she's seen that it's hard to unsee. And, yeah,
Yeah.
you need to show up clean when you get to that woman's space because that's not her story. That's not her problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. The more, I'm around birth and the more just work I do in that and people I meet and talk to, the more I see I think there are many skills I would value in, a birth attendant, a birth keeper, a midwife, but I think the primary one would be, um, that spiritual hygiene piece, that piece where you can, know what's for you to take on and leave behind what's not. And that is, I mean, that's a life skill for us all in all our relationships, right? And maybe that's yeah, when you're attending to someone at one of those rites of passage, right? At like the intersection of a rite of passage. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
there's
real.
a lot of work in there. Hmm.
I've also taken like what would be considered like a death doula training, and I've been around a
Mm,
lot of grief work. Last night I held a circle here in this meditation space I'm at right now, of women who had to share their hard birth stories, their tragic stories,
mm,
and yeah, it's interesting that this is also a negation of our modern society is that birth and death is the same path. It's the
yes.
same portal. It's literally the same ceremony inverted. And
It's
sometimes,
a big circle, right? And you
yeah,
come right back home.
yeah.
That's where we're headed.
And sometimes
Yeah.
birth is also has death as
Yeah.
part of it. And
Yeah.
that has to be something that we accept and see and really can like, yeah, like openly talk about, receive as part of the process too,
Hmm.
because statistics, a lot of these are also void without license. So yeah, yeah, full circle for sure. And I think that it's very easy to be diluted birth as a ecstatic, orgasmic,
Hmm.
climax of the experience of mothering and pregnancy and things, but there's all these layers of other conversations that just kind of get hidden, or
Hmm.
not shown as often, even in the midwife free birth circles, which I've been
Yeah.
navigating in for a very long time,
Yeah.
when they were secret and social media wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
It's unspoken. People don't want to know when a baby dies or that a midwife had this happen or these things happen. And I understand why, because it's hard and
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And at the same time, it gives a disservice to our biology and the truth behind procreation. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
big stuff.
Yeah, we definitely are in our culture very adverse to any suffering, right? And it's why
Hmm,
we medicate away our rites of passage,
hmm.
right? All of them.
All
All
of
of them
them.
are highly intervened
Yes.
upon. And um yeah, and maybe that's like you said in your wild pregnancy there, like that sitting with the discomfort of like, am I even pregnant? Does this baby have eyes? Like
No
all of those
idea.
things, like that's part of, yeah, I don't know. Is it gonna be okay? I don't really know.
And it's
All
also,
I can know is like, am I okay right now? Do I need some support right now? Then I could be like, no, I'm okay right now. Well, then that's all I get to know. That's
yep.
all I get to know.
Yeah, and it's that
Just right
reality of,
now.
like, literally being in our present body, in our present state. Our culture
Hmm.
also doesn't really make room for that. It's always this, like, planning, visioning,
Hmm.
future, the bank
Yeah.
account for our kids when they're older, the college fund, what's gonna and that being really in your body in that presence, that yeah, what a it's so funny that that becomes like almost like a rebellion, in a
Yeah.
way. Yeah, yeah, it's like it's a deep trust of you, like, I deeply trust my intuition,
Mhm.
like, that for me,
Yeah.
myself, that is a straight path for myself. There is no swaying me, and which not a lot of women who grew up in the culture and the generation and the society that I am from can say the same for themselves, and that I think is obviously, that's a tragic state of affairs,
Mhm.
and it's also why we give our power away to violent doctors or systems that aren't there to serve our best interest. And so, yeah, I think finding your like intuitive, yeah, like trusting you is where it really begins. And I know that's hard and scary. But it's
Yeah.
important.
It's the only way through. It's the only way to gain the skill,
And literally
right? Is to
it
Mhm.
literally is part of our work as like in the whole parenting, mothering process. Ugh, it's literally what being a parent is. It's trusting, like,
Mhm.
you will have that come up for you every step of the way around the education you're gonna give
Yes.
your children, if you're gonna give them screens or not, where you're gonna travel with them, if they're gonna get on a public transportation when they're teenagers, like, all the things, and you better have your yeah, you better be sure that you're
It's true,
doing
like,
it.
that skill of, like, sitting in your intuition and knowing you know nothing and allowing it just to unfold, and even, like, as your children get older, that actually just gets more.
Yeah,
It doesn't get better because you have less control,
yeah,
and they're just gonna make their own decisions, and
yeah.
you're gonna be like, "That's crazy." Like, right?
Yes,
Don't.
yes,
But that's it, like, you have no control. You sit there as the support person,
yes,
deeply rooted in your own, like, physical presence and your own intuition,
yes.
I think to model that to your children, and then they are who they are. They do what they do.
Yes. And I think that just like kind of
Mhm.
to round it out, just to like wrap it up of that is, it really is parallel to the way that we approach birth. And unfortunately, this isn't going to come off very awesome for many people because the way that you approach birth is kind of the stepping stone for how parenting is going to be for you. So if you don't trust
100%.
yourself, if you're giving everything up to somebody else, if you're like, oh, well, he's a professional, I'm just going to trust him, you're going to do the same thing with the teachers. You're going to do the same thing with doctors throughout their life. You're going to do the same thing with yeah, like, and that's where, the glitches can begin, or you start to kinda trip up along the way because 'cause you're like, "Well, maybe I'm not the best mom for this baby," or maybe I don't know what's gonna happen if they watch this stuff or play these video games, and so, yeah, that's a mega like you said, that's an important skill set to tune into.
It's true, like, if you don't look at it, you're gonna play out parenting the same way you birthed. But the rite of passage happened, like, whether you acknowledged it or not at the time, and it's always there to reflect on. So, I was just talking to Gina, our colleague,
Yeah.
about this, about how what you learned in your birth is how you're going to that's how you that lesson you got, whatever those lessons were, that's what you can carry forward into parenting. Right? And so it's still there for
Oh,
you. Even if you like gave away all your power in birth, now you know. Now you know, right? And you can
yeah.
start practicing that skill now and be like, what did it teach me? What did I need to know?
Oh,
And then like that's how I'm going to parent this
that's
child.
so
That's
good.
what this child needs.
God, I
Mhm.
needed to hear that today. Thank you so much for that because, like,
Yeah.
I can and I'll say I would have babies 1,000 times, but it's obviously the logistics of raising 1,000 children is not
Yeah.
it's like, no.
Totally.
But that
Yeah.
idea that, like, I was so powered, I was so just, like, so much confidence and assurance in my path with the birth, and that does come up for me in parenting, and sometimes I lose my way,
Mhm.
um, like we all do, but it's just such a great grounding point to be like, "Don't forget,
Mhm.
you do know what you're doing, and even if it doesn't seem like it, or even if all the other kids are doing the other thing and the moms are doing it's you are on the trail and the path that you know that you chose."
Yeah.
Yeah, for
You're the
sure.
only mother for this child. They
Yes.
chose you and you chose them
Yes.
and you know what you need to know. You don't know it all. You don't need to know it all. You only know what you need to know.
Yes. Exactly, love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing your
Yeah,
stories.
thanks for listening.
Um, yeah, do you wanna add anything on the end here about how people can contact you? Do you, yeah,
I
connect with
mean,
you?
yeah, I have the same name of my Instagram as my email address and as the website and everything,
Mhm,
The Life of a Strong Mama, and
mhm,
I think what I would share is that I am available for women who need to talk with somebody to process
mhm,
a birth of whatever
mhm,
that might mean.
mhm,
I've done that a lot virtually, obviously, also in person, but I'm kind of far away from where a lot of listeners probably are. And then just to share, like, if somebody has questions, like logistical questions about, like, how did you come to the decision to have a free birth? Like, what was
Mhm.
your inspiration? Like, what resources would you suggest? What reading materials? Things like that. Um, I don't claim to be and or are interested in holding the title of a virtual birth keeper or somebody who would be
Mhm.
assisting anybody in birth virtually. Not
Mhm.
like that's not a thing for me. But it would just be that. It would just be support or, what would be considered like consultation or, picking my brain, quote unquote, around those
Mhm.
choices. Um, yeah, I think that's what I would share.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll add those details to the show notes. And thanks. It was lovely chatting with you.
Thanks for listening. You can head to Instagram and birth.throughtheveil to see birth pictures or just pictures from each episode. The show notes have links and more ways to connect, along with the link to submit your birth story. I would love to hear it. New episodes of Through the Veil come out every other Tuesday. You can follow, subscribe, share, rate, and review this podcast to be in support. Until next time.